Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update from Elemental Altus Royalties. Elemental Altus is traded on the TSXV under the ticker ELE and on the OTCQX under the ticker ELEMF. And I'm joined today with the Chief Financial Officer of Elemental Altus, Dave Baker. And Dave, it's great to get you back on the show for an update, especially when it's on the back of solid financials. And so you put out to the marketplace on the 18th of August your Q2 numbers and financials. You had record operating cash flow, a lot of other solid numbers from the royalty revenues and gold equivalent ounce production. So let's dig in under the hood here and give us some of the high level metrics and key takeaways from Q2.
Hey Chad, thanks. Great to be on the show. Yeah, it was an excellent Q2, as you said. Adjusted revenue there of 10.5 million US dollars. That's doubled year on year. EBITDA of $8.8 million. That's up 150% year on year. And because we had such a strong Q1, we tend to get royalty receipts, subsequently in subsequent quarters. We had record operating cash flow of $14.4 million. That's nearly 10 times higher than this time last year. So really seeing the benefits of a larger company with fixed cost base, all of that royalty revenue flowing through to the bottom line after tax, driven by an excellent quarter in terms of underlying production of nearly 3,200 gold equivalent ounces from our assets and a record of nearly 7.8 thousand ounces for the half. That's a record and really does allow us to reiterate our GEO guidance of 11.6 to 13.2 thousand ounces for the year. That'd be a 40% growth year on year. And because of the higher gold prices, we then increased our revenue guidance for the year to 35 to 40 million US dollars. That would be a record for the company and about 75% growth year on year. So pretty staggering numbers.
Well, we definitely like to see those getting revised higher, both the gold equivalent ounces and the revenue estimates and the gold price. So there's a lot of things happening that are wind at the sails in the back of the industry, but it's nice to see that for Elemental Altus, it translates over into a bigger pile to be able to do future acquisitions with. Just remind people the financial strength of the company, Dave, when you also factor in the revolving credit facility.
Yeah, so as of today, we've got about 30 million US dollars in the bank generating interest, but we're pretty keen to put that to work on new opportunities. We also have a fully undrawn $50 million credit facility with National Bank, the CIBC and RBC, who are very supportive. And I think would certainly with the earnings capacity, there would be room for more leverage there. So as we stand today, we could deploy 80 million US dollars of available capital without diluting our shareholders one share. So very exciting power for a $350 million company.
Well, and we've talked in the past about this before with the company. I had Fred on to discuss Tether coming in as a key stakeholder in the company, but maybe just reiterate how that also gives you just another asset as far as being able to structure good acquisition deals, having Tether in as your key strategic partner.
Yeah, I mean Tether have been fantastic since coming on a couple of months ago. Certainly shown a willingness to put more capital into the company if required, and been very supportive on looking at some of the bigger deals that are coming across our desk. And that is really led by our new exec chair, Juan Sartori, who sort of masterminded the Tether investment into Elemental Altus. And they've been quite clear publicly that they're here to support us for additional capital if required. So it does really make it easy to know that your major shareholder behind you is incredibly well capitalized and supportive of our growth trajectory.
Well, with all those different elements, the revolving credit facility, the cash pile that you're sitting on, the incoming revenues, the solid gold price, and a solid strategic partner, we're going to be watching, Dave, to see what kind of creative acquisitions you guys make in the months to come and years to come. So it's going to be exciting to watch the company put more value creation in place with all the momentum you have. But let's talk about some of the assets you already have in place and how those are growing. I mean, first up to bat, I think we really need to have investors take a closer look at what's going on in Carlawinda, the expansion that's going on there. This is already a cornerstone asset for you. It's already a fantastic paying royalty, but now it's expanding. So talk to us about Carlawinda.
Yeah, Carlawinda had an excellent quarter, just over 32,000 ounces of production. We get 2% of all of that. So that translated to nearly 2.2 million US dollars just for the quarter alone. That's certainly the best quarter that Carla's had for us. They hit guidance as well. So they do a full year to June because they're an Australian company. So hit the top end of their guidance at 117,000 ounces of production. Critically, they got the regulatory approval for the expansion. So we knew the expansion was coming. So about 30% more ounces. So, but they got that regulatory approval to take them to 150,000 ounces of annual production, still maintaining that 10-year mine life, which would then really, at current run rates, take us to about 10 million US dollars a year in royalty revenue. So incredibly exciting to have that. And I guess that's the beauty of the royalty model is you buy it once and then you're free carried through all of the exploration, all of the expansion. And yeah, very much our cornerstone gold royalty.
Well, and you just said it so well there that like you buy these royalties and they don't change, but the dynamics behind them can change. And that'll be a theme when we talk about a couple of these other ones that, you're not doing any extra work. You're not out in the field, but if they expand the production, expand the operations, that's just gravy on top of gravy. And we could say the same thing about Caserones, your big copper royalty operated by Lundin Mining, but there hadn't been any exploration there in over a decade, possibly longer, and now they're exploring. And if that grows, you're not paying for that exploration upside. It's just happening because you have a quality operator there. So talk to us about your big copper cornerstone royalty at Caserones.
Yeah, gained strong and steady quarter from Caserones. I think 1.4 million US dollars of revenue for the quarter. Importantly, Lundin maintained their copper production guidance of 115 to 125,000 tons of copper. There's two exciting things I think to come. They are expecting higher head grades from the copper in Q2. A lot of that's driven by cathode, so they produce a mix of copper cathode and concentrates. Clearly, we would like more of the cathode because there's fewer smelter deductions. And I think that is a lot of the exploration that they have been doing is identifying new sources of oxide material that can go into the heap leach circuit there. So I think that's obviously a very long mine life, 17 years, I think. So normally we wouldn't be too worried about exploration there, but I think it's been quite targeted exploration in terms of finding new sources of material to feed the cathode circuit, which would be very positive for our royalty.
Yeah, it's just more upside, and nobody knows what's going to come from the exploration, but competent operators and a great deposit bode well for future expansion there too. There's another gold asset you have that we've talked about a lot, and we were talking about this off mic, Dave, that initially when people saw what happened with Diba, now called Corrali Sud, people were like, "Oh, I wish you'd have held on to it and tried to like develop it yourselves." But clearly, having it in the hands of Allied Gold was the right choice because look at how fast this asset has advanced, not just to production, but now it's growing and it's becoming a more and more heavily weighted royalty within your basket of producing royalties. So, talk to us about Corrali Sud for the quarter.
Yeah, so a couple of really positive developments at Corrali Sud. So we obviously had that back pay through that we recognized in Q1 that captured a bunch of revenue. The production in Q4, they were negotiating with the government about when they were able to sell the gold. So we did get that bumper $6.6 million revenue in Q1 that really captured 3 quarters. Another excellent quarter in Q2. So $2.5 million of royalty revenue. So that takes us up to $9 million of royalty, 3,000 gold equivalent ounces for the half year, which is, I mean, well beyond what we thought at the beginning of the year. And that's really being driven by quite a key catalyst at Corrali Sud. So they've agreed with the government, even though it's on a separate license, Corrali Sud to the main Sadiola pit, they've agreed with the government the ability to commingle and blend the ores. And to the different technical requirements, there's a bit more high clay content down at Corrali Sud. There's much more production available to them if they are able to blend this ore. So we sort of had in our internal estimates about 80,000 ounces of production at Corrali Sud for the year, very heavily weighted to the first half, as we've said a couple of times. We've already had over 100,000 ounces of production contribution from Corrali Sud and expecting that still to continue into Q3. So awaiting some guidance from the Allied guys about the future of Corrali Sud, but their ability to blend that ore is critical for future production there. And happily, going over 100,000 ounces means it's triggered that $2 million milestone payment. So we've got 3 million of the 5 milestone payments recognized from Corrali Sud. So all very positive news there.
Well, we should probably point out that in addition to the royalties, you do have these different milestone payments or one-off payments, and it's going to be a big year for those. So maybe just from a holistic standpoint, not just in this quarter, but remind us sometimes these kind of get buried in the news, but you got a lot of these one-off payments.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is all additional to our guidance of 35 to $40 million of revenue. So it's all incremental on top of that. So from Corrali Sud, getting 100,000 ounces triggers that cumulative sort of $3 million of milestone payments. We'd get another $1 million at 150 and 200,000 ounces as well. We don't have any guidance on that yet, but that's all to come. We also received nearly $10 million from our settlement of the disposal of the Ming stream. That landed in the quarter. And then we also, subsequent to quarter end, received $1.9 million of the partial buyback of our Arizona Sonoran Park Salia cactus royalty. So that was all agreed and contemplated. So we now have a 0.54% royalty on Park Salia with Arizona Sonoran. So yeah, a bunch of other cash coming into the company, nearly $20 million of increased cash in Q2, which is pretty staggering.
Yeah, I mean that's real money. That's a lot of revenue coming in, and it's not under the royalty bucket. It's underneath these other buckets. And this is probably going to be an outside year because, as you mentioned, the sale of Ming in there, and some of the other factors. But still, just another way that the company creates value. And sometimes people don't realize that that's just in tandem with all the royalties. But back into some of the partner projects, another one that's been growing in importance is Bonacro. Give us an update on that asset.
Yeah, Bonaco had the most ridiculous quarter. So nearly 24,000 ounces. We get 4.5% of that, translated to just over 3.2 million US dollars. So at some points we're tracking over $1 million a month from Bonaco. Now we are only going to have about 4 years of Bonaco revenue, and then production will move outside of our royalty area. But Allied have been quite clear that they're expecting higher grade materials to be processed in the second half of this year, and then 2026 and 2027. So all attributable to our royalty. So currently tracking about $1 million a month, and Allied have pointed to upside on top of that. So yeah, again, incredible numbers coming out of Bonaco.
Well, there's one royalty that you're still waiting on payment for, and there's probably a few questions from investors on this. So maybe unpack what's going on with Wang Yang.
Yeah, so same situation as Wanyon. So as before, so the government acquired the mine, resulting from the dispute from the former owners, Lilium and Endeavour. They acquired the mine. They wanted to work out why the mine wasn't making as much money as it should be at $3,000 plus gold. So they engaged an external audit firm. We have been in touch with that external audit firm, spoken to them personally, and they have reviewed our royalty agreement, and they've got no comments on that. They've reviewed the French stamped translation, and no comments on our royalty, which is great. But yeah, so the government has paused royalty revenue there. We are expecting that to pick up in the second half of this year and restart once the audit has been completed at Wanyon. To be conservative, just to be clear, we aren't booking revenue on Wanyon while this audit is underway.
Understandably. Well, and I just also, for people, I think I've had one or two questions about, is it still in operations right now?
Yeah, that's our understanding. Yes.
Yeah. So just to clear that up for folks, it's still in operation, just this audit's going through, and as soon as the audit's done, you still anticipate getting those payments. But until then, you're not counting it in your guidance. But when it does come in, you'll obviously note it and record it, and hopefully we'll talk about it. So that's an update there at Wang Yang. Another royalty that's coming up the pipeline that I think we should mention is the Laverton royalty. It's switched operators, and so again, in addition to exploration upside or expansion of resources, you can also have a new operator come in, and it really helps the profile. And again, you're not doing anything different as the royalty company, but you get the benefit of a big boy producer coming in. So talk to us about Laverton.
Yeah, so excellent point, Shad. So we bought the Laverton royalty from South 32. At the same time, we bought the Karlawinda royalty. And really, this is the thesis that we had at the time, is that there'd be consolidation around the gold fields in WA, and that our high-grade ounces around Laverton property would be ideal for one of a number of producers. So we had heard that Focus had gone into a process to sell the asset, and that they sold their Laverton property for 250 million Australian dollars to Genesis is the perfect outcome for us. So we've got 1.5 million ounces of gold in resources that's 30 kilometers away from Genesis producing mill. They're already toll treating ore there to keep that mill filled. So this would be a perfect bolt-on ground for them. And Genesis have already spoken pretty heavily about how this is a new source, a long-term source of ore feed for Laverton there. So extremely exciting and really backs the thesis that we put together when we acquired this royalty back in 2021.
Well, and you mentioned that you got the one-off payment for the royalty buy-down operated by Arizona Sonoran Copper, the Cactus Project. And while it's a smaller royalty, it's on a bigger project. So just talk to us about the importance of that copper royalty.
Yeah, so I mean, this is all in the market, but when we were first looking at Cactus and Arizona Sonoran, we were contemplating a much smaller, underground high grade deposit when they incorporated Mainspring and a much larger open pit. We effectively trebled the amount of metal under our royalty agreement to a much, much larger operation by Arizona Sonoran. And I think they've shown how well capitalized they are and being able to go out and fund in the market the revenue cash flow needed to buy back royalty held jointly with us and Royal Gold, and then showing that they're on track to fund and start construction on this in the next couple of years. So yeah, that's going to be a real material contributor to us. Clearly, strategic minerals in the US is quite a focus at the moment. So one of our higher quality development assets, that's for sure.
Well, and Dave, that makes me think of one more when you say strategic metals. About a year ago, you and I were sitting down at Beaver Creek. We were just talking off mic about getting ready to head back to Beaver Creek in Colorado for the annual pilgrimage. And we were talking at a table last year about the royalty at Mactung with Fireweed Metals and how nobody really understood tungsten. Nobody was excited about tungsten, but you thought it was a fantastic transaction and pickup for the company. A year later, people are totally thrilled about tungsten. It's becoming a strategic metal of importance. Some of that's based on the back of the Chinese export bans, and some of it's just based on the push in the U.S. for domestic supply of critical minerals. So just remind people about the Mactung royalty that you have waiting in the wings.
Yeah, so again, one of our favorite deals is Mactung for sure. So we acquired that for 4.5 million US dollars. Some of it deferred. So in the quarter, or just after quarter end, we made that second payment of $1.5 million. So we've now fully acquired that asset to 4% tungsten royalty with a buy down, potential buy down to 2%. And I think what's got us most incredibly interested is the amount of government attention to critical minerals. And we knew this at the time. We'd seen some leaked screenshots on Twitter about DoD funding, and that the Canadian government and the DoD have committed $35 million into Mactung and into Fireweed. And so that, combined with now Fireweed becoming a Lundin Group company, has really changed the dynamics of that royalty. And I mean, the numbers that we think are credible is that, we've paid $4.5 million for the royalty. We'd expect to get that back nearly every year for an initial 20-year life. So takes a lot for us to move our focus outside of copper and gold. But for deals like that one, we will look at everything, particularly with a critical minerals lens in North America.
Well, just as we summarize, we've talked about a lot here from the strength of the balance sheet, the strength of the strategic partners, the strength of all the operating partners at the royalties, the one-off payments. What else would you like to say to differentiate Elemental Altus in the small but growing universe of royalty stocks?
Yeah, I think it's certainly our available firepower to do deals. So again, $30 million in the bank, 50 on the facility, which I'm sure we could expand if needed. And then having Tether behind us, who are the most incredibly well capitalized company I think I've ever heard of, and very keen to deploy more cash. So really looking forward to being able to talk to you about some of the deals that we're working on right now. But whereas previously, we were, and most companies are quite capital constrained, we now somewhat have the opposite problem where, the capital is available. We just need to deploy it in the best possible way.
Yeah, so I think that the message and the takeaway that I'm getting is that you have the firepower to structure deals that maybe you couldn't have done even a year ago. Definitely not a couple of years ago when we first started talking to you, and you only had one or two paying assets. But it's nice to see the growth of the company. It's nice to see you kind of coming into your own. And the revenue growth in particular and cash flow growth, very nice to see. But I'm excited about the whole pipeline of projects. You have a lot of other royalties that we never even got into here, but you do have a guidebook on your website that people can get into if they want to dig into all the different royalties and assets the company has that are at the development stage or maybe earlier stage advanced exploration. But a lot of positives stacking up for Elemental Altus, and we're excited to keep following along with the news flow. For those of you listening in, definitely click on the link down in the show notes. It takes you right over to the Elemental Altus website, straight to their news section, where you can sign up for updates and have them hit your email inbox, or you can just follow along with the news as it drops. David, keep us posted. When the next key press release comes out, we'll get you back on for an update. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, Chad.